Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about electric fireplaces, and we'd like to thank Jerry Bancroft for liking and sharing the podcast. Alexander Graham Bell invented the first electric space heater in the late 1800s, and he used high-powered light bulbs and a reflector to generate the heat. And you know, Bell didn't have a middle name when he was born, and he bothered his parents so much about it because he didn't like it, that on his 11th birthday, they gave him the middle name of Graham as a birthday present. Happy birthday. And when Bell died in 1922, they had all the phones in the U.S. silenced for a full minute, so 60,000 telephone operators around the U.S. unplugged all the phone lines for a full minute. Electric fireplaces are basically a decorative space heater with a simulated fire that's giving you the illusion of a real fireplace or the logs inside a traditional fireplace. And that fire effect is usually created with light bulbs or LEDs. Some are using reflective panels or frosted acrylic, and it's reflecting the movement of metal pieces, usually on a rotating rod, that's creating this flame effect. Some of these are using prisms, but there's one company called Dimplex. It's Dimplex, and they have this system called OptiMist, and you should really check it out. It uses water vapor and colored halogen bulbs to create this amazingly realistic flame and smoke look. It's pretty wild. There are also electric fireplaces that use an LCD or an LED screen, so this looks like a real fire with smoke and sparks. Some have sound effects, so it has the sound of crackling fire.
Right.
So it's basically a TV screen, but it's very realistic looking. Most of the electric fireplaces are going to work just like a space heater when you need heat, but many can be turned on and give the illusion of a fire without the heat operating.
Okay, good.
The two most common types of heat for electric fireplaces are convection and radiant. Convection electric fireplaces have heating elements that heat up the air around the elements, and then a fan is going to blow that warm air into the room. Most of the convection styles will heat around 400 square feet. With the radiant heaters, these are using infrared waves, which is a type of light wave that's passing through the air and it's heating the objects it comes in contact with. So most of these aren't using a fan, so they're very quiet, and they're going to give immediate warmth if you're in the path of the waves. And some of these units will actually use a combination. They'll have an object inside the heater that's absorbing the infrared waves, that heats up, and then a fan will move that air. The infrared heaters are usually going to heat up around 1,000 square feet. And what's interesting about the infrared heaters is they're not reducing the humidity levels, so they're just passing through the air and just heating objects. Many of these units are going to have a couple heat settings or thermostat control, and almost all space heaters are rated up to 1,500 watts as the max setting, and that's about 12.5 amps. So depending on where you're planning to use an electric fireplace, you may need a dedicated circuit. Before you shop or purchase a unit, I would check the outlet you plan on using and see whether it's a 15 or 20 amp circuit, and then what's on that circuit. What's the total load going to be on it? You may have to rethink the location or run a new circuit from your service panel for your fireplace. You can get wall-mounted units, a fireplace mantle, a fireplace insert, a built-in unit. There are freestanding styles that look like a wood-burning stove, and freestanding media centers, so this can hold a TV on top of it. There's also fireplace logs that you set into a traditional fireplace, and that way you can replace real logs.
So what, are they electric, the logs?
Yeah, they're cool. So some of them will glow, some of them have embers, and then it produces this illusion of a fire going on. So it's pretty interesting. A lot of them have reflective panels, so it's throwing light on the back of the inside of the fireplace. So it's pretty impressive. The wall mount units mount to a bracket that you screw into wall studs, and the heat is going to be coming out of the top or the bottom of the style, so it can't be recessed into the wall. And some of these styles have additional LED colored lights that are reflecting off the back of a decorative frame, and it's illuminating the wall behind it, and you can get different colors. You want to check the length of the power cord and the location of your outlet. You never want to use an extension cord for electric fireplaces or space heaters, and you can double check the manufacturer's recommendations. If you don't want the power cord to show, you can add an outlet behind the unit, or you can get power cord covers that run from the bottom of the fireplace down to the outlet or by the baseboard, and that's going to help hide the power cord. Most have a base that screws or sticks to the wall. You run your power cord on it and then snap a cover over it. Some are going to have fittings that make a 90-degree turn, and then you can run additional channels to an outlet, if your outlet is directly below the unit.
Right.
And then I would paint that cover the same color as your wall, and it's going to be very decorative. Mm-hmm. There's a company called Legrand. It's Legrand, and they carry a wide selection of these channels or cord covers they call wire mold, and you can get it at most hardware stores or home centers.
Right.
With a built-in or flush mount electric fireplace, you're going to be cutting into the wall studs for your installation, and you want to install it in a non-load-bearing wall, and you don't want any electric, plumbing, or vent work behind that space you're going to be working. And
but you can build out the wall, too, instead of cutting into the wall.
Right, which actually makes it easy. You can actually get a very nice look, so you can create a wood framing, put drywall over it. It's much easier to run your electric, too, if you build out the area. I've seen some people, what they'll do is they'll build out the wall, they'll put in the electric fireplace, and then over that, they'll build an area for a flat-screen TV, and which looks pretty dramatic. Mm-hmm. Most of the built-ins are going to be hardwired, so you're going to have to run a cable or flexible metal conduit to it. And some of these styles come very narrow and wide, so you can mount it down low like a traditional fireplace. Some you can mount up high above your furniture. So check where the heat comes out, match it to what's going to be around the fireplace too. Some designers use lightweight faux brick or stone and put it above and below the fireplace, and that way it looks more like a traditional fireplace. And with the built-ins, you want to compare the depths and also how it's attached to the studs.
How are they attached?
So some are going to be flush mounted, and others you have 4 brackets, for example, in the corners. You're going to screw it into the studs, and then it's going to have a decorative frame over that, so it finishes it off really easy. Most of those are going to have a glass panel in front of it.
Does it come with brackets?
Yes. Electric fireplace mantles are going to give you the appearance of a traditional fireplace, and so this is a cabinet that has the look of either wood, stone, or tile around the firebox. And originally, that term, fireplace mantle, was just the wood shelf over the opening of a fireplace, and that would help catch the smoke. And then builders started using copper and stone for mantles, so it was absorbing and reflecting more heat into the room. But now the term fireplace mantle includes the top and the framework around the opening of fireplace.
So these are freestanding?
Yes.
So can you move them from room to room?
Yeah, very easy. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what most people like about a fireplace mantle. They're easy to set up. You're just pushing it against a wall and then plugging it in. The freestanding stove styles have the look of a wood-burning stove without the flue pipe, and many of these are smaller and easier to move to different rooms if you're using it like a space heater. And I think these also give you a little more flexibility on where it looks good in a room, rather than like the mantle style where it's got to be pushed up flush against a wall.
So you think people are moving these from room to room?
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't they just get a space heater?
Because this is super cool. Electric fireplace media centers come in a range of sizes and styles, and generally the firebox is going to be centered in the cabinet, and these are designed to hold a TV on top of it. So you can get styles that have shelves below the TV for your DVD player, DVR. Some are going to have cabinets on the sides. Some are actually full-size cabinets, so they'll hold a big screen TV. They'll be shelving on both sides. Some are 6 feet tall.
Wow.
So it's pretty impressive. When you're comparing styles, look at the weight limits, especially if you have an older TV. And if you have kids in the house, you should secure the media centers or wall-mounted styles with a wall strap, and that will prevent a tip-over. Fireplace inserts are designed to fit inside the opening of a traditional wood-burning fireplace. Before you shop, you want to measure the height, the width, and the depth of the opening, and if it narrows at the back, you want to take those measurements. And depending on
Why would it do that?
A lot of fireplaces, they angle in. It's just the design. And depending on the material around your fireplace, you may want a style where the frame or the trim is slightly wider, and that way you can put it over the drywall and give a very finished look. If you have stone or brick, you might want a smaller unit that's going to fit slightly into the opening, and then you can use a trim kit. If they don't have a size that's perfect for you, you can get a trim kit, and that's going to close off any gaps. And you can also build a platform underneath it to increase the height for tall openings, and then you can use a trim kit rather than special ordering a custom unit, which can be expensive.
Interesting.
With an insert, you're going to get the best look if you run a dedicated electrical circuit with an outlet into the opening or hardwire it. You want to close off the damper before you install it to prevent air movement and install a rain cap on top of the chimney. Some manufacturers recommend putting a cover plate on top of the chimney, and that's going to prevent rain and moisture from getting in. And there's a product called Flue Blocker that you can put in your chimney. It stops air, bugs, and bats, and it's made out of herdwick wool. So this is from sheep in England, and the wool is very durable. It's a great insulator, and herdwick sheep can survive snowstorms for days just from the protection of their wool, and if they're stuck in the snow, they can eat their wool to get calories to survive. Electric fireplace logs are designed to be placed inside a traditional fireplace to give you the look of real logs. Some are going to glow or have ember beds that glow, and then it's creating this realistic looking fire. Most of these are going to include a space heater, and if you don't plan on ever using your fireplace, you can run a dedicated circuit to this, and it's going to look more realistic. But if you plan on using the fireplace with wood in the future, or you plan on selling your house and you don't want to close off the fireplace, then you can plug it into an outlet by the fireplace or run an outlet close to the fireplace. And this is just an easy way to create the illusion of a fire in an existing fireplace if you're not using it because you don't like to store wood or
make fire.
Right, or you're worried about the sparks, kids and pets. And they're very efficient because you keep the flue closed.
Right.
Some of the features I would look for when I'm comparing electric fireplaces: does it have a programmable thermostat? Is there a remote control? Some you can adjust the flame height, the color, or the brightness. And then are the units cool to the touch if you have kids or pets? And then how portable are they? Some top-rated electric fireplaces: Dimplex, it's Dimplex, Duraflame, Dura, Southern Enterprises, Real Flame, Napoleon, Classic Flame, Amanti, it's Amantii, and they have some three-sided fireplaces, so they're pretty dramatic looking. Cartwright, Cartwright, Walker, Edison, Jackson, and Touchstone. Since we're talking about electricity, we had a question from Tony Coleman about plugs that don't stay in an outlet firmly. So outlets that don't hold a plug tightly could potentially be a fire hazard.
Why?
When the electricity is flowing between the plug and the outlet, if the plug sags and creates a small gap, you get arcing. So it's creating tremendous heat. It can actually melt the outlet and potentially start a fire. And with high watt appliances like a space heater or an electric fireplace, these are designed for the plug to make full contact all the way in the receptacle. And if that plug sags and it reduces the area of contact, it can increase the heat and potentially cause a fire. If you have outlets that don't hold plugs firmly in place, you should remove them and replace them. And for plugs that get a lot of use, you should get a high quality outlet. It's going to have better component parts. It's going to last longer.
How do you know it's high quality?
So if you go into the hardware store, you're going to see like 59-cent outlets.
Okay.
And then you're going to see $2.59 outlets. Go for the $2.59. It's going to have much better parts inside. It's going to hold the plugs much better. When you get those cheapy outlets over time, especially if you're using the plug a lot,
right,
it just bends those parts inside. When you're replacing an outlet, always turn off the power to the circuit you're working on and double check it with an electrical tester. A shock under the right circumstances can be deadly. And you want to match your outlet to the circuit. So if you have a 15 amp breaker or fuse, you're going to use a 15 amp outlet. If it's a 20 amp circuit, you're going to use an outlet that's rated at 20 amps. And an outlet's going to have brass screws on the side of the outlet with a narrow slot. Okay.
So if you're at the hardware store,
right,
how can you tell if it's a 15 amp outlet or a 20 amp outlet?
So it's going to be...
they're just these big bins filled with outlets. A lot of times they're in the wrong spot.
Right. Some are difficult to read the markings on it. So a 15 amp outlet's going to have two slots that are parallel and then a circular hole for the ground. The two slots, one's going to be narrow, one's going to be wider. On a 20 amp outlet, that wider slot's going to be a T-shape, and that's going to allow you to plug in a 20 amp appliance into it. So on the outlet, you're going to have brass screws on the side with a narrow slot. This is your hot side, and you're going to be connecting your black or red wires to this side if you have non-metallic cable. If you have conduit, you could have other colors.
Right.
On the other side, you're going to have two silver-colored screws, and this is the side with the wide slot. This is your neutral side, and this is going to be connected to the white wires. You have a green ground screw that you're going to connect your bare copper wire to, or a green ground wire. And if you have conduit, you may not have a ground wire. The conduit is the path for the ground all the way back to the service panel.
Right. Are you going to talk about the tab?
You should always check, when you remove an outlet, one thing you should always check is the tab on the brass side. So this is a small piece of metal between the two screws on the brass side of the outlet. And if you have a switched outlet, what they've done is they've taken a needle nose pliers and they've broken that, and so half of the outlet is on all the time and half is operated by the switch. So when you look at the outlet, if it's broken, you need to break it on the one that you're replacing it with. Once you replace the outlet and you've turned the power back on, I always like checking an outlet with an outlet tester. So it's got a troubleshooting guide. It has two lights. And so it's going to tell you whether you've wired it properly. It's going to tell you whether it's grounded properly, and if there's any other problems, like a loose neutral wire, for example. Some of the top-rated outlet testers are from Gardner Bender, Klein Tools, and Amprobe. It's A-M-P-R-O-B-E.
Do you have anything else to add?
When you're planning on where to put a freestanding electric fireplace, I would check the location of the outlets, how many amps the circuit is, and what the total load will be on that circuit. You may have to run a dedicated circuit. If you're getting a media center, compare the weight limits of what can be placed on top of it. And for the built-in units and fireplace inserts, you're probably going to want to run a dedicated circuit for the best look. And then compare the area heated. Some are around 400 square feet. Some can be 1,000 or more. Check the clearance requirements for your unit. Most want 3 to 6 feet away from anything flammable. And don't store items with water on a mantle style, like a flower vase.
Why?
Because water and electric is bad.
Let's wrap this up.
We'd like to thank everybody who's been sharing and liking the podcast on social media. And you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, the Spotify mobile app, the Google Play Music app, iHeartRadio, and CastBox.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can download our books, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, on Amazon. You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
You can subscribe to that as well.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com, and you can follow Cindy on Twitter at FixItCohost.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.